Captain Sarah Chen was having the worst day of her career. Her ship, the cargo hauler Midnight Runner Asterisk, had broken down 3 light-years from the nearest station. The engine was making sounds like a dying whale, and her oxygen recycler was working at 60%. To make everything worse, she was babysitting. ROAARRR came another deafening sound from her quarters. Sarah rubbed her temples and looked at the communication console that was blinking red. An incoming priority transmission from Galactic Command. Of course it would come now, when she was stuck with 3 tiger cubs that belonged to the Felixian ambassador. The cubs weren't ordinary Earth tigers. These were Felixian royal cubs, each the size of a small horse, with intelligence levels that rivaled most sentient species. They also had one terrible habit. They loved to yell into any communication device they could find. "Computer, accept the transmission," Sarah said, hoping she could handle whatever command wanted quickly. The holographic image of Admiral Verk appeared. The tall, blue-skinned Zentorian looked as serious as always, his 4 eyes focused on something off-screen as he read from a data pad. "Captain Chen, we have a code red emergency. The colony ship New Hope has lost all navigation and is drifting toward the Maelstrom Nebula. 200,000 civilians are on board, including families with children." Sarah's blood ran cold. The Maelstrom Nebula was a death trap. Ships that entered never came out. The gravitational anomalies and radiation storms would tear apart anything that got too close. "Sir, I understand the gravity of the situation, but my ship is currently experiencing mechanical difficulties. I'm dead in space right now." Admiral Verk finally looked directly at her through the hologram. "Captain, you're the closest ship to their position. Even with your cargo hauler, you're their only hope of rescue. We're sending you their coordinates now." GRRROWWWWWRRR. The sound exploded from Sarah's quarters, so loud it shook the walls of her small bridge. Admiral Verk's 4 eyes went wide. "Captain, what was that? Are you under attack?" Before Sarah could answer, one of the tiger cubs came bounding onto the bridge. The massive orange and black striped creature looked like it weighed at least 300 pounds. Its golden eyes sparkled with mischief as it spotted the holographic admiral. "Oh no," Sarah muttered under her breath. The cub, whose name was Prince Whiskers according to his documentation, let out another earth-shaking roar directly at the communication console. The sound was so loud that feedback squealed through the speakers. "What is happening there?" Admiral Verk shouted over the noise. "Sir, I can explain. I'm transporting 3 Felixian royal cubs to the Peace Summit on Zirian Prime. They're completely harmless, but they have this thing about communication devices." Prince Whiskers seemed to take this as encouragement. He moved closer to the console and opened his massive jaws. The hologram flickered and distorted. Admiral Verk covered his audio receptors with his hands. "Captain Chen, can you please control that creature? This is a matter of galactic security." "I'm trying, sir, but they're royalty. I can't exactly put them in a cage." Another cub appeared on the bridge. This one was slightly smaller, but had distinctive white stripes along her face. Princess Spots immediately saw what Prince Whiskers was doing and decided to join in. GRRRRRWWWWWA. The 2 cubs began what could only be described as a roaring contest, each trying to be louder than the other. The ship's communication system was struggling to filter out the noise. Admiral Verk looked like he was developing a headache. "Captain, regardless of your current situation, you need to get moving. The Asterisk New Hope has maybe 18 hours before they reach the point of no return. Can your ship make the journey?" Sarah looked at her engine diagnostics. The readings were not encouraging, but she'd worked miracles with less. "Sir, I'll need to reroute power from life support and artificial gravity. It's going to be a rough ride, and I can't guarantee we'll make it in time." "Do whatever it takes, Captain. Those people are counting on you." The 3rd cub, the largest of the 3, Prince Stripes, chose that moment to make his entrance. Unlike his siblings, he didn't roar immediately. Instead, he studied the hologram with intelligent eyes, tilting his massive head to one side. Then he did something that surprised everyone. He sat down politely and made a small, almost conversational chirp at Admiral Verk. Did that creature just greet me?" the Admiral asked, his voice filled with wonder. "I think so, sir. The Felixians are incredibly intelligent. They probably understand more than we realize. Prince Stripes chirped again, and this time Prince Whiskers and Princess Spots stopped their roaring contest to look at their brother. There seemed to be some kind of communication happening between them in a series of soft chuffs and chirps. "Captain," Admiral Verk said, his voice taking on a new tone of urgency, "I'm uploading the rescue protocols to your ship now. The Asterisk New Hope is carrying colonists to establish the first joint human-alien settlement in the Outer Rim. This mission cannot fail." "Understood, sir. I'll get my engines running and head out immediately." The hologram flickered again, as all three cubs suddenly let out a synchronized roar that nearly shattered the communication console. "Good luck, Captain," Admiral Verk said, rubbing his audio receptors again. "And may the stars help you deal with those passengers." The transmission ended, leaving Sarah alone on the bridge with three massive tiger cubs who were now looking at her with expectant golden eyes, as if they understood that an adventure was about to begin. Sarah spent the next 2 hours performing miracles on her dying ship. She rerouted power from everything non-essential, including the artificial gravity in her own quarters and the fancy automated food processor. If she was going to save 200,000 people, she'd have to make do with emergency rations and floating around her cabin. The tiger cubs, meanwhile, had decided that watching her work was the most fascinating thing in the galaxy. Prince Whiskers perched himself on a cargo crate where he could observe every move she made under the main engine housing. Princess Spots had claimed the pilot's seat and was carefully studying the star charts on the navigation display. Prince Stripes, the apparent leader of the group, positioned himself near the communication console as if he was standing guard. "Okay, boys and girls," Sarah said, wiping grease from her hands as she emerged from the engine compartment. "We're about to attempt something incredibly stupid. I'm going to push these engines past their safety limits, which means this ship is going to shake like a paint mixer on steroids." Prince Whiskers tilted his massive head and made a questioning chuff. "You want to know what a paint mixer is? Never mind that. The point is, things are going to get bumpy, and I need you three to stay put. The last thing I need is 300-pound cats flying around the bridge when we hit turbulence." Sarah activated the engine startup sequence. The ship groaned and shuddered as power flowed to the main drives. Warning lights blinked across her control panels, and the computer began listing everything that was wrong with her plan. "Warning, engine operating at 112% of recommended capacity. Warning, life support reserves at minimum levels. Warning, structural integrity compromised." Yeah, I know," Sarah muttered, strapping herself into the pilot's seat. "Computer override safety protocols, authorization Chen Alpha 7. Safety protocols overridden. Captain, this course of action is not recommended." "Nothing about this day has been recommended." Sarah engaged the hyperdrive. The ship lurched forward with such force that everything not bolted down went flying. The tiger cubs, however, proved that they had excellent balance and reflexes. Prince Whiskers dug his claws into the cargo crate and held on. Princess Spots gripped the sides of the pilot's chair with surprising grace. Prince Stripes simply planted his feet wider and rode out the acceleration like he'd done it 100 times before. "Okay, that wasn't so bad," Sarah said as they settled into hyperspace. The engine was making concerning noises, but they were moving. Her communication console chimed with an incoming message. Sarah's heart sank when she saw it was another priority transmission from command. She really hoped it wasn't bad news. "Accept transmission," she said. This time it wasn't Admiral Verk. Instead, a nervous-looking human lieutenant appeared on the screen. "Captain Chen, I'm Lieutenant Martinez from the Rescue Coordination Center. I have updates on the Asterisk New Hope Asterisk situation." "Go ahead, Lieutenant." "Ma'am, we've been monitoring their position, and the situation is worse than we thought. They're not just drifting toward the Maelstrom Nebula. They're being pulled into it by some kind of gravitational anomaly we've never seen before." Sarah felt her stomach drop. "How long do we have?" "At their current rate of acceleration toward the nebula, maybe 14 hours before they cross the event horizon. But Captain, there's something else. We've lost all communication with them. Their last transmission was unusual." "Unusual how?" Lieutenant Martinez looked uncomfortable. "They reported seeing lights in the nebula, organized lights moving in patterns, then their transmission cut off." Before Sarah could respond, Prince Stripes let out a low, rumbling growl. It wasn't the playful roar he'd made earlier. This was different. Worried. All three cubs suddenly became very alert, their ears perked up and their eyes focused on the communication screen. "Lieutenant, did you say organized lights?" "Yes, ma'am." The New Hope S sensors detected multiple light sources moving in formation within the nebula. The science officer's last report suggested they might be artificial. Princess Spots made a series of quick, sharp chirps. Prince Whiskers responded with his own series of sounds. They were definitely communicating about something, and whatever it was, they didn't like it. "Captain," Lieutenant Martinez continued, "there's one more thing. The Galactic Council has been monitoring this conversation. They want to speak with you directly." "The Council? Why would they want to talk to me?" "I don't know, ma'am. They just said it was urgent and related to your current passengers." Sarah looked at the three tiger cubs, who were now all staring at the communication screen with intense focus. Prince Stripes made a deep, thoughtful sound that almost sounded like words. "Patch them through, Lieutenant." The hologram flickered and changed. Now Sarah was looking at the impressive circular chamber of the Galactic Council. Representatives from dozens of species sat in tiered rows, but front and center was Ambassador Felicia of the Felixian Empire. She was a magnificent creature, even larger than the cubs, with silver and black stripes and piercing green eyes that held ancient wisdom. "Captain Chen," Ambassador Felicia spoke, and her voice carried the weight of authority. "I understand you are transporting 3 of our royal cubs." "Yes, Ambassador. They're safe and well cared for." "Captain, what I am about to tell you must not leave this transmission. The cubs you are carrying are not ordinary royalty. They are the next generation of Felixian navigators." Sarah blinked in confusion. "Navigators?" "Our people have abilities that others do not. We can sense things in space that technology cannot detect. Dangers, opportunities, safe passages through areas others consider impossible to traverse." Prince Stripes suddenly stood up and walked directly to the communication console. He looked directly at Ambassador Felicia and made a complex series of sounds that were definitely language. The ambassador's eyes widened. "Prince Stripes says he can sense something wrong about the space around the New Hope asterisk, something ancient and hungry." "Hungry?" Sarah's blood ran cold. Princess Spots joined her brother and made her own series of chirps and growls. Ambassador Felicia listened intently. "She says the lights are not ships. They are something else. Something that has been waiting in that nebula for a very long time." Prince Whiskers jumped down from his crate and added his own commentary to the conversation. His sounds were urgent, almost frantic. "Prince Whiskers says," the ambassador translated, her voice becoming grave, "that whatever is in that nebula feeds on ships and the life force of those aboard them. The New Hope is not just in danger of being destroyed, it's being hunted." Sarah stared at the 3 cubs, who were now all looking at her with expressions that seemed far too intelligent and knowing for animals. "Ambassador, are you telling me that these cubs can actually help navigate through the nebula?" "Captain Chen, they are your only hope of reaching the New Hope safely. Our navigators have guided ships through impossible spaces for thousands of years. But they are young, and this will be the first time they face something this dangerous." Sarah looked at Prince Stripes, who met her gaze steadily. In his golden eyes, she saw not just intelligence, but determination and courage. "All right," she said, making a decision that would either save 200,000 lives or get them all killed. "How do we do this?" Ambassador Felicia explained the process, while the 3 cubs listened with rapt attention. Felixian navigation was unlike anything humans had ever encountered. It required a deep connection between the navigator and the ship's pilot, a sharing of senses that allowed them to perceive space in ways technology couldn't match. "The cubs will need to touch your navigation console," the ambassador said. "They can extend their consciousness through the ship's sensors and feel the currents of space around you. But Captain, this is dangerous for them too. If something happens to your ship while they're connected, the feedback could seriously harm them." Sarah looked at the 3 massive cats, who were now positioned around her pilot's chair like bodyguards. "I understand, Ambassador, but we're all they've got. There is something else you must know. The entity in the Maelstrom Nebula. We have encountered it before. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors called it the Void Hunger. It is older than most civilizations in this galaxy, and it feeds on the life energy of spacefaring species. Prince Stripes padded over to the navigation console and placed one massive paw on the sensor array. Immediately, the ship's displays began showing information Sarah had never seen before. Instead of simple star charts, the screen now showed swirling currents of energy, like rivers of light flowing through space. "Incredible," Sarah whispered. "I can see the gravitational flows." Princess Spots joined her brother, placing her paw on a different section of the console. The display expanded, showing the space around the asterisk New Hope as a complex web of forces and energies. And there, lurking in the heart of the Maelstrom Nebula, was something that made Sarah's skin crawl. It wasn't a ship or a creature in any sense she understood. It was more like a hole in space itself, a hungry darkness that seemed to absorb everything around it. Tendrils of shadow reached out from it toward the asterisk New Hope asterisk, slowly but inexorably drawing the colony ship closer. Prince Whiskers completed the connection by placing his paw on the communication array. Suddenly, Sarah could hear something impossible, the distress calls from the asterisk New Hope asterisk, but not through her radio. She could hear them directly in her mind, transmitted through the Cub's enhanced senses. "This is Captain Morrison of the asterisk New Hope asterisk," came a voice filled with desperation. "We're experiencing complete system failures. Our engines are dead, life support is failing, and something is pulling us toward the center of the nebula. If anyone can hear this, we have children on board. Families, please." The transmission cut off, but Sarah could still sense the ship through her connection with the Cubs. 200,000 souls, terrified and helpless, being dragged toward something ancient and evil. "All right, boys and girls," Sarah said, her hands moving over the controls with new precision guided by the Cub's enhanced perception. "Let's go save some people." She pushed her engines to maximum power and dove toward the Maelstrom Nebula. The journey that should have taken hours was compressed into minutes as the Cubs guided her ship through shortcuts and passages that didn't exist on any star chart. As they approached the nebula's outer edge, Sarah's instruments began to fail. The electromagnetic storms and gravitational anomalies that gave the Maelstrom its deadly reputation began to buffet her ship. Warning alarms blared as her hull plating started to buckle under the stress. But the Cubs remained calm. Their enhanced senses allowed them to navigate between the worst of the storms, finding safe corridors through the chaos. Sarah found herself making turns and adjustments that defied logic, but somehow her ship held together. "There," she said, pointing at the main display. "I can see the asterisk New Hope asterisk." The massive colony ship was tumbling helplessly through space, its hull scarred by impacts from debris and energy discharges. Worse, Sarah could see the dark tendrils of the void hunger wrapped around it like the tentacles of some cosmic octopus. "How do I fight something like that?" Sarah asked. The Cubs began to communicate among themselves in their complex language of chirps, growls, and purrs. Ambassador Felicia, who was still connected through the communication system, translated. "They say the void hunger feeds on fear and despair. It grows stronger when its prey is helpless and afraid, but it has a weakness." "What weakness?" "Hope, courage, the determination to fight against impossible odds. These things disrupt its ability to feed. Prince Stripes says this is why humans are important. Your species has a gift for refusing to give up, even when logic says you should." Sarah smiled grimly. "Well, we're definitely too stupid to know when we're beaten." She opened a communication channel to the asterisk New Hope asterisk, using the Cub's enhanced abilities to punch through the nebula's interference. "New Hope asterisk, this is Captain Chen of the cargo ship Midnight Runner asterisk. I'm here to get you out." The response came immediately, filled with relief and disbelief. "Captain Chen, how did you get through the nebula? Our instruments show massive gravitational anomalies between us." "I have some very special navigators helping me. Listen carefully, Captain Morrison. I need you to restart your engines. I don't care if they're damaged or if your engineers say it's impossible. We need to move now." "Captain, our engines are completely dead. We lost main power hours ago." Sarah looked at the Cubs, who were all staring at her with expectant eyes. She could feel their confidence in her through their connection to her ship. "Captain Morrison, I'm going to try something that's probably going to sound insane. I'm going to use my cargo tractor beam to grab your ship and pull you free. but I need your people to do something for me. Anything, Captain. I need everyone on your ship to focus on home. Think about the planet you are going to colonize, the new life you are going to build there. Think about your families, your dreams, your future. Don't think about the danger we're in. Think about hope. There was a pause. Captain, I'm not sure I understand. Trust me on this one. The thing that's got you trapped feeds on fear. We're going to give it something it can't digest. Sarah engaged her tractor beam and felt her ship's power systems strain as she tried to grab onto the much larger colony ship. At the same time, the Cubs intensified their connection to her navigation systems, helping her find the exact angle and trajectory needed to break the Void Hunger's grip. But as soon as she made contact with the New Hope asterisk, the entity noticed her. The dark tendrils that had been slowly wrapping around the colony ship suddenly turned toward her small cargo hauler. "Oh, that's not good," Sarah muttered as her ship was surrounded by writhing shadows that seemed to exist both in space and in some other dimension entirely. The Cubs began to roar in unison, but this time it wasn't the playful noise Sarah had heard earlier. This was a battle cry, a declaration of war against something that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia. And somehow, impossibly, their roars were having an effect. The shadows recoiled as if burned, and for a moment the Void Hunger's grip on both ships weakened. The Void Hunger reacted to the Cubs' defiant roars like a living thing in pain. The dark tendrils writhed and twisted, pulling back from both ships momentarily. Sarah seized the opportunity and fired her engines at maximum power, trying to drag the New Hope away from the entity's grasp. But the ancient creature was far from defeated. It had been feeding in this nebula for thousands of years, and it wasn't about to let two ships escape easily. The shadows regrouped and struck back with terrible force, wrapping around Sarah's ship like chains. "Warning, hull integrity compromised," her computer announced in its maddeningly calm voice. "Structural collapse imminent." "Not yet," Sarah growled, pushing her engines beyond their red line limits. "Come on, you piece of junk, hold together." Through the Cub's enhanced senses, she could feel something else happening aboard the New Hope asterisk. Captain Morrison had passed along her message about focusing on hope and home. Throughout the massive colony ship, 200,000 people were thinking about their destination planet, about the new cities they would build, the children they would raise, the future they would create. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The Void Hunger's tendrils began to smoke and dissolve wherever they touched the New Hope asterisk. The entity let out a sound that was less heard than felt, a psychic scream of frustration and hunger that made every conscious being in the area cringe. "It's working," Captain Morrison's voice crackled through the communication system. "Whatever you told us to do, it's working. The shadows are pulling back." But the victory was temporary. The Void Hunger turned its full attention to Sarah's smaller ship, apparently deciding that if it couldn't have the colony ship, it would consume her vessel and the 3 young navigators aboard it. Prince Stripes removed his paw from the navigation console and walked directly to Sarah's chair. Looking up at her with those intelligent golden eyes, he made a sound that didn't need translation. He was asking for permission to do something dangerous. "I don't know what you're planning, big guy, but if you think it'll work, I trust you." The massive tiger cub placed both front paws on the arms of Sarah's pilot chair and closed his eyes in concentration. Princess Spots and Prince Whiskers immediately flanked him, creating some kind of mental link between all 3 cubs. Sarah felt a surge of power flow through her ship's systems. Not electrical power, but something else entirely. The cubs were channeling their life force directly into her ship, turning it into something more than metal and electronics. For a moment, the Midnight Runner became a living thing, aware and determined, and absolutely refusing to be consumed by the cosmic predator. The Void Hunger's tendrils struck the ship again, but this time they couldn't maintain their grip. Sarah's cargo hauler blazed with an inner light that the ancient entity found toxic and painful. "Now," Sarah shouted, engaging every thruster and engine at once. Her ship lurched forward, dragging the massive colony ship with it. The tractor beam groaned under the stress, and Sarah's engines screamed in protest, but they held together. The 2 ships began to pull free of the Void Hunger's influence. The entity made one last desperate attempt to reclaim its prey. The entire nebula seemed to convulse around them, gravitational anomalies and energy storms converging on their position. Sarah's navigation displays went wild as space itself seemed to twist and fold. But the Cubs weren't finished. Working together, they projected their enhanced senses outward, creating a protective bubble around both ships. The storm of cosmic forces broke against their combined will like waves against a seawall. "Almost there," Sarah muttered, watching the edge of the nebula grow larger on her displays. "Come on, just a little further." The void hunger gave one final psychic shriek of rage and frustration before releasing its hold on them entirely. Both ships burst free of the maelstrom, nebula like corks popping from bottles, tumbling into clear space beyond the gravitational anomalies. Sarah's engines finally gave up the ghost, shutting down with a series of small explosions and a lot of smoke. Her ship went into emergency power mode, life support dropping to minimum levels and artificial gravity cutting out entirely. But they were safe. Both ships were clear of the nebula, and the void hunger showed no signs of following them into normal space. Midnight Runner this is the New Hope came Captain Morrison's voice, filled with emotion. "I don't know how to thank you. You saved 200,000 lives today." Sarah was about to respond when she noticed something wrong. The 3 tiger cubs had collapsed around her chair, their breathing shallow and their golden eyes dim. The effort of channeling their life force through her ship had taken a tremendous toll on them. "Ambassador Felicia," Sarah called out urgently. "The Cubs are in trouble, they're barely conscious." The Felixian ambassador's image appeared on the communication screen, her face grave with concern. "They have given too much of themselves to save the colony ship. This is why we do not ask the young ones to attempt such things." "What can I do? How do I help them?" "There is only one way. They need to feed on life energy to restore themselves, but not the corrupted energy that the void hunger uses. They need the pure life force that comes from joy, love, and gratitude." Sarah looked confused. "I don't understand." "Captain Morrison," Ambassador Felicia called out, "can you establish a communication link between your ships? All of your ship's passengers need to see these young heroes who saved them." Within minutes, Captain Morrison had rigged a ship-wide broadcast that connected both vessels. Sarah found herself looking at thousands of faces on her communication screens: men, women, children, elderly people, families from dozens of different species who had been colonists aboard the New Hope. "These are the 3 Felixian cubs who helped save your lives," Sarah said, gesturing to the exhausted tigers. "They risked everything to guide us through the nebula and fight off the creature that was trying to destroy you." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of voices began calling out thanks and blessings. Children pressed against the screens to get a better look at the massive cats. Parents held up their bobbies as if presenting them to royalty. The elderly bowed their heads in respect and gratitude. But it was more than words. Sarah could feel waves of genuine emotion flowing through the communication link: love, gratitude, hope, and joy from 200,000 beings who had been saved from a horrible fate. The cubs began to stir. Their eyes brightened as they absorbed the pure life energy being freely given by the colonists. Prince Whiskers was the first to stand up, shaking his massive head and looking around with renewed alertness. Princess Spots stretched like any housecat waking from a nap, except she was the size of a small vehicle. Prince Stripes rose regally to his feet and walked to the communication screen. Looking directly at the thousands of grateful faces, he opened his mouth and let out a roar that was different from any sound he had made before. This wasn't a battle cry or a playful yell. This was a song, a celebration, a declaration of joy and victory that resonated through both ships. The colonists cheered and applauded, and many of them began to weep with relief and happiness. They were safe, they were alive, and they had witnessed something remarkable: the courage of 3 young creatures who had faced an ancient evil to protect strangers. 3 days later, Sarah was sitting in the most prestigious space dock in the galaxy, watching repair crews crawl all over her battered cargo ship. The Midnight Runner looked like it had been through a war, which wasn't far from the truth. Half her hull plating was missing, her engines were completely shot, and her life support system was held together with prayer and spare parts. But she was alive, and so were 200,000 colonists who should have been space dust by now. The 3 tiger cubs had become celebrities overnight. News crews from across the galaxy had descended on the space station to interview the Felixian heroes who had faced down the legendary void hunger. Prince Stripes, Princess Spots and Prince Whiskers seemed to enjoy the attention, posing regally for photographers and graciously accepting treats from admirers. Sarah was less comfortable with the fame. She'd given one brief interview where she'd tried to deflect credit to the Cubs, but the reporters seemed more interested in the crazy human cargo captain who had flown into the Maelstrom Nebula to save people she'd never met. "Captain Chen," came a familiar voice behind her. Sarah turned to see Admiral Verk approaching, his blue skin looking less stressed than it had during their emergency communication. Behind him walked Ambassador Felicia, moving with the fluid grace that only Felixians possessed. "Admiral Ambassador," Sarah said, standing up from the observation deck chair where she'd been watching the repairs. "Captain, I wanted to personally thank you for your actions," Admiral Verk said. "The rescue of the Asterisk New Hope will go down in Galactic Command history as one of the most daring operations ever attempted." Ambassador Felicia stepped forward, her green eyes warm with gratitude. "Captain Chen, my people owe you a debt that can never be repaid. You not only saved those colonists, but you helped 3 of our young ones complete their first navigation trial under the most dangerous circumstances imaginable. They're the real heroes, Ambassador. I just drove the ship." "You did much more than that," a new voice said. Sarah turned to see Captain Morrison of the Asterisk New Hope approaching with a small group of colonists. Men, women, and children who represented the thousands of families he'd been carrying to their new home. "These people wanted to meet you personally," Captain Morrison said. An elderly woman stepped forward first. Her hair was silver, and her eyes held the wisdom of many years. "Captain Chen, I'm Dr. Elena Vasquez. I was the chief medical officer aboard the Asterisk New Hope Asterisk." "Doctor," Sarah acknowledged. "I've been practicing medicine for 50 years, Dr. Vasquez continued. "I've seen courage in many forms, but what you did out there, flying into that death trap to save people you'd never met, that's the kind of courage that legends are made of." A young man with his arm around a pregnant woman stepped forward next. "Captain, I'm David Park, and this is my wife Janet. We were on our way to start a new life on Kepler 7. Our baby will be born in the colony we're going to establish there." Janet Park spoke up, her voice filled with emotion. "Because of you and those amazing cubs, our daughter will grow up under an open sky instead of becoming food for that monster." One by one, the colonists introduced themselves and thanked Sarah. There was Marcus Webb, an engineer who was planning to build the colony's first power plant. Lisa Chen, no relation to Sarah, a teacher who would establish the colony's first school. Tom and Maria Santos, farmers who were carrying seeds and livestock to start the colony's agricultural system. Each person represented not just a life saved, but a future preserved. Children who would be born, cities that would be built, discoveries that would be made, all because one stubborn human and 3 brave tiger cubs had refused to accept that some things were impossible. "You know," Sarah said, looking at the assembled group, "when I took that emergency call from Admiral Verk, I was just worried about my ship breaking down and 3 noisy passengers who wouldn't stop roaring into my communication system." Prince Stripes, who had been napping nearby, opened one golden eye at the mention of roaring. He made a small, dignified chuff that somehow managed to sound offended. "Sorry, Your Highness," Sarah said with a grin. 3 distinguished royal passengers who were enthusiastically greeting incoming transmissions. Prince Whiskers bounded over to the group, having grown comfortable with crowds over the past few days. He made a happy chirping sound and gently bumped his massive head against Dr. Vasquez's hand, nearly knocking her over. "They really are remarkable creatures," the elderly doctor said, scratching behind the cub's ears. "To think they're capable of navigating through space using senses we can barely comprehend." Princess Spots joined her brothers, completing the trio. All 3 cubs sat in a neat row, looking like the most well-behaved and deadly pets in the galaxy. Ambassador Felicia watched her young charges with obvious pride. "They will return to our homeworld as heroes. This rescue will be remembered for generations, and their names will be spoken alongside the greatest navigators in our history." "What about you, Captain Chen?" Captain Morrison asked. "What's next for you?" Sarah looked at her battered ship, then at the cubs, then at the faces of the people she'd helped save. "Well, first I need to get my ship repaired. Then I suppose I'll go back to hauling cargo. It's what I do." Admiral Verk cleared his throat. Actually, Captain, I have a proposal for you. Oh no, Sarah said. The last time you had a proposal for me, I ended up fighting cosmic horrors in a nebula that supposedly kills everyone who enters it. This proposal is different. Galactic Command has been discussing the need for a new type of rescue operation. Someone who can handle emergency situations that conventional ships and crews can't manage. We'd like to offer you a commission as a special operations captain. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Special operations? Me? I'm just a cargo hauler. You're a cargo hauler who flew into the Maelstrom Nebula and came back alive, Admiral Verk pointed out. You're also someone who managed to work with Felixian navigators to achieve something we thought was impossible. Ambassador Felicia nodded in agreement. The Cubs have requested permission to continue working with you, Captain Chen. They believe your species and ours could accomplish great things together. Prince Stripe stood up and walked over to Sarah. Looking up at her with those intelligent golden eyes, he made a complex series of sounds that somehow conveyed friendship, loyalty, and a desire for more adventures. He says he wants to see more of the galaxy with you, Ambassador Felicia translated. All three of them do. They believe that humans and Felixians working together could help many people throughout the galaxy. Sarah looked around at the faces surrounding her humans, aliens, colleagues, and 3 tiger cubs who had become the most unlikely crew members imaginable. You know what, she said finally. Why not? My cargo hauling business was getting boring anyway, but I have one condition. Name it, Admiral Verk said. I want a bigger ship. One with better engines, more comfortable quarters, and a communication system that can handle 3 very enthusiastic Felixian navigators who like to announce their presence to the entire galaxy. Prince Whiskers let out a happy roar that echoed through the space dock, and Princess Spots joined in with her own joyful cry. Prince Stripes, always the dignified leader, simply purred loudly enough to vibrate the deck plating. The colonists laughed and applauded, and even Admiral Verk smiled, something Sarah hadn't thought possible. As she looked at her new crew and contemplated the adventures ahead, Sarah realized that sometimes the best things in life happened when you answered an emergency call while tiger cubs were yelling into your microphone. She had started the week as a lonely cargo hauler with a broken-down ship. Now, she was a special operations captain with 3 royal navigators as her crew and 200,000 people who owed their lives to their combined courage. Not bad for someone who had just been trying to deliver some passengers to a peace summit. The cubs gathered around her, their massive forms creating a protective circle as photographers captured images that would become legendary throughout the galaxy. In the years to come, when people told stories about the human who flew into the Maelstrom Nebula, they would always remember the tiger cubs who roared defiance at an ancient evil and helped guide them home. And somewhere in the depths of space, the void hunger retreated deeper into its nebula, nursing wounds inflicted by hope, courage, and 3 young tigers who refused to let it feed on innocent lives. The galaxy had become a little bit safer, one roar at a time.